Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Aveco webinar. Today we will tell you a little about Aveco and a lot about our new product, the media asset management of a new generation, Gemini. First, let me introduce you the company. Today's media industry has been built around four fundamentals: create, manage, deliver, and monetize. Where is the Aveco position around these fundamentals? In the create category, we have our beautiful Astra studio news production automation, as well as various ways how to ingest assets into the system. In manage, we have made a big step forward by introducing Gemini, the media asset management system. Create and deliver is nice to have, but create and manage is nice to have, but deliver is what's bringing revenues. And here our position is very strong with our Astra master control automation, as well as the integrated channel playout systems. In the monetize category, we integrate with those companies who do a great job in planning commercials, or managing subscriptions, etc. We have customers almost around the world, in many parts of the world. We have about 300 of them, and to stay close to our customers, we have 9 offices in various regions of the world. There are various large, big reference companies that are using our system, as well as many small. We can serve them all. You may recognize some of these logos, and we have many, many more among our customers. We have been recognized not only by our customers, but also by the industry itself. In the year 2019, we have received the IBC Innovation Award for our project ETV Parrot in India. What Oscar is for movies, the IBC Innovation Award is for media projects. We are proud of winning this award out of 160 contenders that year. In 2018, we received the NAB Best of Show for our master control automation. In 2017, the MOS group, the organization responsible for developing the MOS protocol, has received the Emmy Award. Aveco is an active member of this MOS group. We are actively participating on developing and evolving the MOS protocol. And together with all our members, we feel proud of receiving the Emmy Award. 2015 IBC Best of Show for our studio automation system. This diagram shows the areas where we are active. We do ingest, we do news production and studio production, we manage media, we take care of master control playout, we integrate with many third-party systems and devices, we integrate with cloud appliances, on-premises appliances. The importance of our vision of create, manage, and deliver is in the fact that we take responsibility for all the life cycle of an asset, from the initial bits and pieces up to the final product that is being delivered to the customer. So far about Aveco. And now, this is the moment we all are waiting for. Let me introduce you Ondřej Mrázek, the product manager of our media asset management. And let's talk Gemini. Ondřej, over to you.
Thank you, Pavel. Hello, everyone. So let's get started. So what is Gemini? We're saying that Gemini is a new generation mom. It can run standardly on premises, it can run in the cloud, or it can run as a hybrid across several platforms. So how people can use it? In standard MAM workflows, we have parts from the ingest asset up to the delivery of the asset, or media across many workflows and technologies. Each of the workflow part is very specific, and for standard users, it's very hard to find the right tools to use. So the Gemini is a platform between the users and the rest of the technical world. It's spreading up the user processes and responsibilities with a simple and single interface. Now the question, where is it running? Of course, you still need to have some servers to handle the backend part of the job. So let's say those servers are located in the Amazon cloud, or they can be in the Google cloud. We basically don't care which cloud platforms customers use, as the Gemini can run anywhere. Also, Gemini can be spread across multiple cloud platforms as illustrated. Or you can have the system as well in your machine room as a physical or a virtual machine. Or it could be one single server, which is literally hanging in your basement. I can tell you that most of the users don't care where it is running, but they care what devices they need to use. So we did the market review, and most of the users are using Windows. So it's running on Windows. But what about the rest users, which are using the different operating systems? Yeah, we support those as well. As the whole user interface is running in secure HTML5, you can use your preferred internet browsers. And because it's HTML5, we support mobile devices as well. When we were starting with Gemini development, we came with basic requirements. It has to be running on secure web with no other software or plugins. This will enable us to run the UI flawlessly on mobile devices. The backend has to be running on Linux. We are using OpenSUSE as a server node operating system, which is very well maintained by the vendor. And it has to be running in any cloud. Our developers do not like when we use the word any, but they did a great job, so Gemini is cloud independent. So those were our original requirements. But as we were asking more and more customers what they would like to have in the MAM, we included few more features. We developed the system to be running as a cluster, so it's very secured for any technical issues. We also completely redesigned our new user management. So we did the product review again, and we were quite happy. But as quite is not enough, we included few more. So let's focus on the features we are really proud of. We developed our Adobe Premiere Pro plugin, so users can use only Adobe interface to find and use the material. System is cooperating with artificial intelligence to bring more automatic metadata. Because of the cluster architecture, the Gemini is highly scalable. We are bringing a new feature called timeline annotations, and now we can say the system is fully open. So let's go through some of those features more deeply. Let's start with an open system. Open system means that the system can be controlled from outside. So we are introducing a new Gemini API where the system itself can be controlled through third-party APIs or your developed software. Well, API control means you can use even iPhone shortcuts for API commands. This approach allows us to adapt your or customer requirements. And of course, we can integrate the Gemini with other devices, systems, and appliances. So for those of you who know Aveco, we are using the same wide open integration for Gemini as for the automation itself. New release feature is timeline annotations. Those are descriptive metadata to the asset itself, viewable in the asset player. Annotations can be in several versions to one single asset. For example, technical version, user version with some remarks, or it can be automatically generated version from third-party quality check software. Of course, we are providing full text search across all annotation versions, so users can find what they are looking for very quickly. But still, we were thinking about how to provide a more efficient way how to fill the annotations automatically. And why should not use the artificial intelligence? Because it is an incredible metadata filler for all the assets. So we take advantage of our latest cooperation with TVU networks and integrate it into the Gemini. It is generating automatically speech-to-text transcription for all the assets. Just for the info, TVU supports more than 100 languages for transcriptions. And later on this year, we will bring face recognition. This will allow us to search across all the assets by actors, politicians, or journalists. Next is a video editor. Video editor is a pre-cut feature. Users can prepare their projects by all available assets in Gemini, edit and preview those assets in the timeline. These projects can be then exported to the NLEs like Adobe Premiere, Final Cut, Blackmagic DaVinci, and so on. In those softwares, the assets can be verified and further edited by an editorial user, or it can be a completely automatic process of creating new material, let's say in use with Adobe Media Encoder. So this is when users want to prepare the projects from Gemini. But it can happen that some of the users, especially editors, like to work only with their favorite software. So we started with Adobe Premiere and brought Gemini plugin. In this case, users do not have to switch the windows and they can use only with the Premiere, where they easily add the clips to the project bin or directly to the timeline from our plugin. In this plugin, users will see the whole Gemini content. Next one, workflows. Of course, as we are in the market with our automation product, we like the automatic workflow so users can concentrate on more fun things. It can be metadata driven, so the trigger for starting the automatic workflow can be some metadata tag. Like if the category is YouTube, the system will automatically do the necessary transcoding, transfers, and so on. It can be also file driven. So if the clip itself is, for example, PAL or NTSC, it can start completely different jobs. We are using our powerful scripting workflow engine, where our developers or project team members do not like when we are saying that, but anything is possible. We will be introducing also a graphical version of the workflow engine later on. Next powerful feature is sharing the asset with users. So no more print screens, no more you need to find this or that. Users can simply share the web link of the asset through email or any messenger app. The one who receives the link will open it. If the user is not already logged in to the system, he needs to log in. And the page of the shared asset will open in a detail view. Links can be used for assets, placeholders, or video editor projects. Now I believe you don't want to be bored with our slides, so let's do a preview. Good. So this is our login page. So I use my credentials to log in. Good. So when the user log in, he has in view immediately a dashboard. In this dashboard, we are supporting widgets. So in my dashboard, I've added there a few filtering widgets. So I can immediately see the clips they are in the YouTube, the expired clips, the placeholders, or the clips uploaded today. Of course, users can change the columns, they can change the filters, and so on. The next one is the media view. So in the media view, you can see the list of the registered assets. We can have the list, or if preferred, we can also see the thumbnail view. So this is the other option. Of course, without any search or filter, you can see all of those clips. But if you have already saved some filters, you can see that in the preset part. Those filters can be used in dashboard widgets. Or if you want to create or edit any of your filters, you can just expand the filter. And you can see that for this filter, the YouTube filter or the preset, I have already searched that this it should contain a YouTube string. Or I can add a few more rules. Or I can also use a new group to create more powerful filters. So this is a very good way how to find what we are looking for. Of course, if the user will find the correct clips, they need to view it, they need to review it, they need to change the metadata, and so on. So let's open one of those clips. So if I will hit edit, you can see that the new tab will open. So it means that you can switch back to your search or filtering tab, and you can choose any other asset for the editation. You can also create a new tab for the searching, and we don't care how many tabs you will have open. It's still working. So let's go to my original one, Black Widow trailer. You can see that we have the player on the left side. I'm not saying that this is the LoRa's or proxy player, because it's a pure HTML5 player, and we basically don't care what clip will be there or what format will be there. It only depends of your internet connection between the client and the server itself, or where is the LoRa stored. So you can see that the clip or the player itself, the loading is incredibly fast. For the navigation, you can also use the keyframes, which are below the player. So we can use for the navigation the keyframes. Just click and it will go directly to the timecode. On the right side, we have so-called Spyglass. Spyglass is our metadata editor. For the demo, we have just added some of the metadata as the example. It's not so many, but even with that amount of metadata, it's very hard to find what you are looking for. So if I want to find when the clip was created, I can just simply type into the fast find field, or cancel that. The edit itself is very easy. Just hit edit, and then you can just edit the metadata with standard usage. Then creating the segments or the subclips. Well, there are two options how to create the subclip or the segment. The first one is through the Spyglass itself. As you can see, we've got a new subclip button. A new subclip, manually edit the in point and out point, but no one is doing that manually. So if we will use the player itself, we can just move the in point, the out point, and it's basically done. We can save it, and create a new segment or a new subclip. Or if I will save it like it, so I will go to the edit. I can change or trim the master clip itself. So this is how the trimming and creating the new subclips is done. Next feature are the timeline annotations. So we can switch from the metadata view to the annotation view. In this view, you can see that I have already imported or created. We don't basically care if it's imported from the third party or if it's created by API command, or if the user will create a new version manually. So I have already here one version, which is the speech to text. It has 19 annotations itself. We can see when it was last updated and by who, and what is the total duration of all the annotations in this version. Below the version, we have the annotations itself. So we have here the information for each annotation about the in point, the out point, what is the duration of the annotation, the category, if it's the marker, chapter, segment, and so on, and the title of the annotation with the description. You can see that if I will select only the annotations I want, those annotations are highlighted in the preview panel, in the preview timeline. Or if none of the annotation is highlighted, in the timeline player, I can see all the annotations in the timeline. Of course, you can edit the annotation even if it was imported from the third-party software. You can duplicate, delete. You can also create a segment or a subclip directly from the annotation, so it will automatically take the in point and out point. You can play the annotation. You can go to the mark in, mark out of the annotation. Standard features are searching through the annotations. So searching through the annotation version, searching through all the annotation versions, or you can use the searching or filtering in the media view. So it will search across all the assets, across all the annotation versions. So let's go back. Of course, creating the new annotation directly from the view, yeah, this can be handy. So I have I've got here my new annotation. But I think that more handy is when we are creating the annotations directly from the preview. So let's say I want to go here, create new annotation, go in here, new annotation, here, new annotation. And in this view, you will then see your created annotations, which are waiting for your description. So those were the timeline annotations. Next one, what I mentioned, is the user management. So let's go to my settings. We have the information about my own profile with the email for resetting the user password if I will forget. We have also the preferences for setting the password, for changing the language. So at the moment, we are supporting the English and Czech. In the next month, we are releasing the German and Spanish version as well. And later on this year, more languages will be coming. I can also change my theme color to black, with also the theme colors on the top. So let's switch to my default view and go to the user management. In the user management, we are standardly supporting the groups and the users. So we can, or in this demo, we have the two groups, administrators and media. If I will expand the administrator groups, I can see the list who or which accounts are assigned to these groups, or I can simply include those accounts to the administrator groups, and it's assigned. To the users itself, it's basically the same. If I will expand the user account, I can see to which groups this user is assigned. And also I can remove it easily from the groups or including it to the groups. But what is really cool is when I will see the roles directly to the user or to the group. So for this example user account, I can see that some of the access rights are gray one, and it means that those access rights are set or inherited directly from the group settings. So I'm not able to change it because it's already copied from the group settings. But what I can do that I can say, okay, I want that this user will have also the option for pasting from clipboard. And I can also say, okay, this user can also edit the endpoint. He can also edit the keywords tag. So we can set the access rights directly to the metadata tag itself. But not only to the metadata, but also to features like timeline annotations, the user management, or to the video editor. So those are our new this is our new user management system. So let's go to the video editor itself. In the video editor, which I mentioned is our precut, we have two options how to create a new project. First one, simply create a new project, my new project, add project, and it's done. Then I can open it and start working with it. But this is how the project is created manually. What if I want the project to be created automatically? Well, that means, and we are using the right side of the video editor, that you can create a new project from a placeholder. But what that means? Well, this is really nice workflow, and it means that at the morning, let's say that at the morning, some journalist boss will create a new or will add a new story to the evening news. Well, this new story in a traffic or newsroom system is created as a new placeholder. So this placeholder doesn't have any raw material, any physical file. It's only the descriptive metadata. So this is only the metadata. Then the journalist will go to the field, do some shooting, and upload those physical files to the Gemini. And of course, those files can be connected automatically by some rules to this specified placeholder. So it means that then the user can select the placeholder and create a project from this placeholder. And how it will look then? Well, if I have the project, it can be created manually or it can be created from the placeholder. So when I will open the new project, in this placeholder or in this project, all clip assigned to this project is viewable in the project bin. So in our example with the journalist in the field, the project can be called a new placeholder for later on breaking the news. And it will have automatically assigned clips from the shooting. And how to handle the project? Well, this is very, very easy. You can add and remove the clips manually from the project itself. So let's say that I want to include also those clips to the project, add the project, and it's there. It's automatically inserted to the project bin, and it's automatically inserted also to the project timeline. So let's go back to my view. So in this, when I will select any clip from the project bin, I can also trim that directly in the video editor. But so every clip inserted or attached to the project or in the project bin can be also trimmed directly in the video editor. Those metadata for changing the in point and out point are not updated to your media part. So for several video editor project, if you will have attached one single file, your original in point and out point will still remain. On the right side, we have the timeline view. So what that means? Well, in the timeline view, we can see the clips, how they are going one by each other. And of course, we can, I will just mute this player. We can play those clips. So the transition between these clips is the cut for now. So after I'm done with the review or editing or managing the project itself, I can simply close the tab. You can also see that the tabs are supported in the video editor. So I can open one project, I can open another project, and you can simply switch between those two. Very easy. So I'm done with my demo project or demo webinar project. So how to handle it more? Well, it can stay in the system, or you can say, okay, I want to export this project. So for exporting it, we are using the standard file export, so EDL standard, or Adobe Premiere XML standard, Final Cut XML standard, and so on. Then those files can be then handled manually, or they can be handled automatically, for example, the Adobe Media Encoder or any other third-party automatic softwares. So let me switch to the Adobe Premiere. Perfect. So in this view, this is a standard Adobe Premiere view where you still have the project bin, you have the timeline, you have on the right side the final player. Well, I think that it is familiar with the video editor, right? And then on the left side, we have the Gemini plugin. So when I will log in to the plugin, I can see the media, the list of the assets. So you have here still your saved presets. You can still do the filter and the search. And of course, what you will save as your filters in this view, it's automatically updated to your internet browser view, as it's still using your account. So how to then insert the clips from the plugin to the project? This is incredibly easy. You can just drag and drop to the bin, or you can drag and drop directly to the timeline. Those drops are not the low-res clips anymore, but in the Adobe Premiere, we are working with the high-res files. But this is the configuration option. So yeah, it doesn't make sense, but if you would prefer to handle in Premiere the low-res, this is possible as well. But this is still that users need to do the project manually. But what about my project from video editor? So let's open it. Open a project. I will find my XML file, export it from the video editor, and open it. And you can see that I have all the clips in the project bin. I have all the clips prepared in the timeline as well. So from this point, I can verify if this clip is okay, or I can add some presets for audio. I can do some effects in here. I can also put some graphics in the Adobe Premiere, and then I can simply export it as a new high-res file, which is then registered automatically to the Gemini UI. Or this whole process with the open project, export project, and so on, can be completely automatic. Let's say in the Adobe Media Encoder. or any different softwares which can handle this workflow. It's pretty handy. Good. So this was the Gemini UI. This was our plugin and how it can be used in real life. So let's go back. Let's go back to the presentation now. Perfect. Next one is the integration with Astra. Astra is our automation product, so we should have a good integration as well. We had a long list of customer questions who are already using our products for MCR, PCR, or Studio about the integration with Gemini. You know, before starting working on Gemini, we dig into Astra and try to find the best solution for us and mainly for customers. We choose the way that the Gemini and automation will share the database and the microservices. So the data exchange is incredibly tight, not only for the database, but Astra is taking advantage of the Gemini API to manage data as well. For Astra itself, we are already using an automation UI called NUI. This UI can work in parallel with Gemini as they are working on the same data. This means any updates done from Gemini are immediately visible in NUI. And same for the opposite way. So the integration is not needed as it's working like plug and play. Developers did a great job on this. Next, ingest of the assets. You saw what magic is needed in the backend. You saw how its UI look. But how can we register the new assets in real life? Well, there are many options for how to do it. Let's focus on the main ones. First is a baseband ingest. This is used when recording a live feed. For this part, automation is really needed as it controls devices in the ingest chains like router and the video server ports. So after the recording starts, we have already a growing file for this clip and you can start working on it in Gemini. Second option is file ingest. This is the part between the physical clip and the Gemini. It means it can be also between a journalist mobile device in the field and Gemini. In this part, we left some workflow and ideas on how to use it directly on the users. As if I have already some clips on my mobile device, I can use any third-party app to upload them. For example, Google Drive app from Microsoft to upload the clip to Azure, Nextcloud app to upload the clip to your in-house cloud, or a simple file app to upload it to my folder in some network storage, or any other app you choose. So we take advantage of those third-party apps because they are very well maintained by the software vendor. Users can choose any app they like to use, and the system is checking the destination folders. This means after the clips are copied to those watch folders, they are automatically registered to the Gemini. And if there is set any trigger when a new file arrives, we can start a further automatic workflow to process the file. For example, we can send it to the QC, start transcoding, check for new metadata, and so on. Third, but not last one, is to use any other third-party media exchange solutions. So the Gemini can be integrated with other MUMs as well. Good. Next one, your questions. So please don't hesitate to ask.